Well, this season was certainly a fully loaded circus, wasn't it? Unlike Florida State's 2-10 season from 24, it was quite a bit more difficult to determine which of these astronomical failures of this season were worthy of wearing the squeakiest shoes in the college football world. There were plenty of options. Clemson went from a title and conference favorite to falling apart upon spawn, exploding on defense to the point they literally couldn't stop air, and got embarrassed multiple times by the ACC of all conferences, just for Dabo Swinney to preach in Dabo Swinney dictionary speech, garnering one of the most funniest quotes of the season.
To win, you got to not lose.
LSU went from a title favorite post their win over Clemson to doing what Brian Kelly does every year and beating themselves before any real contender could beat them, resulting in the Burger King getting out of Baton Rouge and lighting the fuse to publicly pissing themselves in the form of a horrifically mismanaged coaching search. They were only bailed out because of another perpetual clown, Lane Kiffin. We could put Ole Miss fans in a contender for this award too, as they thought Kiffin had actually changed. You can't turn a hoe into a housewife, but you can turn them into a bigger hoe with enough money. But even with all these embarrassments that came in the 2025 season, none compared to that of a team that went from a consistent contender in their program to one of the quickest implosions of said program to the point you think it was divine retribution for the Sandusky cases. To no surprise, the ultimate contender and winner for this award had to be the 2025 Penn State Nittany Lions. They had enough luxury on their roster to win the entire thing, and yet they went like their program's tradition and whited out. It ended in firings, a roster exodus, and a recruiting class as hollow as Drew Aller's head in clutch situations. To understand how this collapse could have happened, we have to take Lake Michigan fans and unload the time machine. Let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? Hey, not that far! I know it's been a long time since they've seen success, but come on! Let's just go back like a year. Everyone will have their own take on what inevitably led to the downfall or where it began, but I'd rather think it began somewhere along the rainbow of which was Penn State's 2024 season. Even by this point, James Franklin had been the head coach of the Nittany Lions for over a decade. However, he became a market symbol of above average. Never bad, but never elite either. Always a stepping stone to hold Ohio State or Michigan's jockstrap every season, no matter who was coaching there for them. James Franklin became notoriously symbolic when it came to his big game stature. When the talent fee wasn't there to bail him out of his own offensive incompetence, failure and only failure followed. Time and time again, Penn State would undergo a cycle of coming up short in the big ones to a point it drove their fans to peak insanity. And the 2024 expansion also brought upon new contenders for the conference that dwarf big game James in big game moments. Even Lincoln Riley can sometimes scramble together an offense strong enough to win a conference. But the college football world was given what I would consider a program like Penn State's metaphorical orgasm.
All right!
The 12-team playoff. Now, teams like the Nittany Lions, who constantly fall short in the big ones, can use their talent fee to moonwalk past whatever shit stains they scrabble together from the former Big Ten West. That was the easy part. The much more complicated part comes when Penn State has to battle against other playoff teams on their level. Luckily for them, this particular team just so happened to be the most loaded one Franklin had to date. The dual-back system of Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton made way for the Lions to have an average of 200 rushing yards per game. This mixed in with the first-round draft picks and edge rusher Abdul Carter on the defense and tight end Tyler Warren on the offense allowed them to blitz past most of the adversity on their schedule. Not having to play Michigan, mixed in with the soft slate of Big Ten games, made way for Penn State to cruise to 11 wins, and thanks to Ryan Day's phone brain when playing the Wolverines, allowed for Big Game James to make the Big Ten championship, which he then lost to Oregon. Baffling, I know. But with the newly installed 12-team playoff, it's still allowed for Penn State to get another shot through the bracket, even with their 2 losses. Just like their schedule, Penn State's road to the national championship was front-loaded with gifts from teams illy prepared for a top 10 scoring defense. Carter himself atomized the offensive line from 2 different horses, with quarterbacks who you can instantly tell have never faced any sort of defense near as competent as the one they had to here. And while we're on the topic of quarterbacks with decision-making and level of a Georgia player on the road, that leads us to Drew Aller. When the lights are at their brightest, he does what Penn State quarterbacks do best, and that's nothing. Furthermore, proving Trace McSorley is the greatest quarterback James has ever had, a testament of which became all too clear during the Orange Bowl against Northern Illinois' son, Notre Dame. Penn State's defense had been doing an elegant job keeping Jeremiah Love at bay. Chaos overtime was on the horizon as long as they decided to avoid being completely brain dead.
As long as 49. Aller hit as he throws, and it is intercepted! Christian Gray picks it off!
Be aggressive. "Your quarterback isn't going to put the ball in jeopardy," said Greg McElroy. Yes, let's be aggressive and air it out with the quarterback who has won as many clutch games of the air as Carson Beck. The same quarterback has now ended the night with more receptions to Notre Dame than his own receivers. A big, fat, fucking Krispy Kreme donut. 0. I'm sure you've heard this times aplenty, but you almost had him.
Snap and hold are good. The kick is good.
What stings the most is that the college football world disregards both Boise State and SMU as big wins, so you still haven't fulfilled that quota. If nothing else, you finished the season with 13 wins, the highest in program history, and managed a top 5 finish for the first time in 20 years. While you're like everyone else, losing significant talent you have to work around for next season, you're in a better spot than most. In fact, you're probably in the best spot out of anyone losing players. I'm sure you'll take that momentum home and drive it to an even better spot next season. Right? Reported sightings indicate that there's perhaps a 1% chance that you f*** this up. Doing so would indicate that you didn't make the playoffs or something like that. Imagine taking a team like this and coming up short of that. Firstly, Penn State is within the top 25 of returning talent. While they lost both of their greatest playmakers on both sides of the ball to the NFL draft, they seemingly thought to counteract that by bringing in talent that'll help fix their previous problems. While they did lose Tom Allen to Clemson, they wasted no time at all adapting to that fact with the wooing through money of Ohio State's Jim Knowles. It only took him 3 years with the nuts to formulate a national title winning defense. He had a top 25 defense the previous 2 years as well. I'm sure he'll repeat that here. Additionally, most of the depth on the roster remains of the Lions going into the season. While he had his fair share of ups and downs, Penn State does keep Drew Aller for another season, while Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon are all bringing in new starting quarterbacks for this season. No way all 3 of those will outperform your offense, not with this change in mind. What would he do? Since last season's wide receiver core was as useful as a Bowden pizza, James Franklin completely revamped the position going into this season. Catch of the Year specialist Kyron Hudson from USC, Trevor Pena from Syracuse, and Devontae Ross from Troy. You gotta go back to the days of Jahan Dotson to find a Penn State receiver actually worth a damn. I'm sure at least one of them will end up with 50 or more receptions by the end of the year, but even if they don't, they've returned not one, but both of superstar running backs in Allen and Singleton. And with nearly the entire Walnuts, their offensive line also coming back, it's almost a guarantee that Penn State's rushing offense will be one of the best in the country, if not the best. Totally not going to get outrushed by Tulsa, Auburn, or East Carolina. All these factors together allowed Penn State to get more offseason talk than Nebraska when asking if they'll ever be back. Going into the preseason, they arose to the number 2 ranking, and every single media outlet was predicting the Nittany Lions to run the gauntlet and win the entire thing. Hefty expectations, especially considering that a national championship is quite literally the expectation. James Franklin has proven infinite times that he's done very well under heavy pressure when the lights are at their brightest. No way you'll piss yourselves in record time this year. Oh boy. The 2025 season has officially begun for Penn State, and to nobody with an IQ above their preseason ranking surprise, it came out as dry and unmotivating as always. CBS made their 2025 football debut just to go and watch the Nittany Lions refuse to cover the spread. I don't really know what Vegas was thinking, but there were a lot of degenerates who fell hook, line, and sinker for Penn State's offense. The Penn State run game was unusually lackluster, which is forgiven by the fact that Drew Aller had a game where he looked at least a little competent for once. This is especially true when his game is compared to the likes of Chubba Purdy. Even without Abdul Carter, the Lions' defensive front was leaving right where they left off seemingly. Forced fumbles, interceptions, making Purdy run for his life the entire night. It was to the point that the only thing worth mentioning about Purdy was that he was 38 pounds at 1 year old. It was enough of a success of a day that their starters were eventually sat for the backups, including the Grunk. Don't worry about that name, it'll become all too familiar soon. After this result, the Penn State fans have come dangerously close to believing in a Penn State wide receiver core for once. Kyron Hudson, along with the rest of the transfers, show potential for the future. Behind a lacking run game and James Franklin trying to throw hands at the refs, the Lions ended the night with a record of 1-0. A record that'll provide encouragement for when they have to play a real opponent. A day of which may never come. This team certainly played like that was the case. Once again, Penn State comes out and plays lackluster against yet another Popeyes East type of football team. Since it was still early in the season, fans and media alike were under the misconception that this FIU team had some sort of backbone and was far different than any other Panther squad. Sure, ride that delusion for as long as you can. Despite what was another in the win column, rising concerns are starting to show from fans regarding the square they call an offense. It didn't even open up to any capacity until the third quarter. The run game was the same way, with 2 NFL backs in the depth chart. Drew Aller was getting outplayed on the field by Bo Prabula, who is currently in the midst of putting up far better numbers at Missouri. Fucking Missouri! Luckily, it only took him 3 quarters to find out at a pass, as compared to the Panthers side, who never once found out. Hard to do so with Chaz Coleman breathing down your neck with near equal adversity to what Carter brought. The Jim Knowles defensive chemistry is getting the level of praise as expected. I'm sure that won't change later. The same praise cannot be said for Andy Kotelnicki, who's already getting thrown onto AI McDonald's posts. Again, a win is indeed a win. But do you think you deserve to ring that bell? I'm very skeptical of that myself. But Happy Valley is still happy after week 2. Find a way to fortify the offensive line before next week, or you might be in a very bad position going into week 3. Oh, for Tress McSorley's sake, we're 3 weeks into the college football season. Since when did Villanova even have a football team? This is like when a 9-1 SEC team gets caught playing Alabama Tech going into week 13. How'd y'all get away with this? With a non-con stretch and the level of Texas A&M's strength of schedule, it's no wonder Penn State sleepwalked their way to 3 wins in a row. Squidtard! Villanova made it to the FCS semifinals! Yeah, the FCS champion got atomized by the Duckies to start the season. What's your point? You got multiple teams in Tank Conference breaking their backs now just to get to 500. And yet here's the Nittany Lions being handed a giant-ass cookie cake straight from the local Great American Cookies. Thus the team identity, even as we progress into week 4, is still a complete enigma. As with most Power 4 versus FCS matches, it was a dragging up and down the field for the entirety of the game up until the final Villanova drive, where they clutched up and got a score to once again ruin the nights of the degenerates who bet on this game. Another win for normalcy. But if Drew Aller is out here throwing interceptions and grasping an 18.6 QBR against the likes of the Patriot Conference, what the hell is going to happen once he's up against Big Ten teams? We have yet to see a game where he can throw for more than one pass that isn't a screen or a curl for 2 yards apiece. Consider it a gift by the football gods that you're still ranked number 2 after all this time. Who are you going to play next? The bye week? Oh my lord. No wonder you guys fall short of expectations every season. You've become accustomed to playing gumdrops and ice cream every week.
When you have a consistent process and a consistent schedule, it shows consistent
consistency. But if nothing else, the Lions are 3-0, the Wildcats get a paycheck, the Gamblers lose again, and everyone goes home happy to Happy Valley. I'm sure this jolly old feeling will last far more than the next 2 weeks. 5 weeks. It took 5 weeks for Penn State to play someone in their own league. I'm not even talking conference either. I'm talking Power 4 overall. But finally, we get to witness a true test to find out if this rendition of the Big Games James squad is like all the others, or if it's really built different. College game day is here, the whiteout's here, LeVar Arrington is here. It's setting up for the perfect, ultimate, true Penn State fashion disappointment. Where'd you think it was gonna go? In a fashion in every big game under Big Game James, the Penn State offense did what it does best and flatlined upon contact with any force equal in talent to them. Kotelnicki's offensive game plan was to prevent Drew Aller from Drew Allering the game away, but it came at the cost of doing offense in any capacity. Screens and out routes for 2 yards a dozen, which ended in punt after punt after punt after punt. The lone saving grace of the entire night was the Jim Knowles offensive front, and the inability for Will Stein to call any offensive production that might be. The Nittany Lions managed just 189 total yards of offense through regulation play. Wow, 189? That's peak for a James Franklin offense! The so-called lethal run game was getting blanked as if they were running into a brick wall on every carry. It was another primetime episode of miscues, undisciplined football, and James Franklin looking like a total mess on the sideline, for he knew this was a challenge he could never upend. The worst part of it all is that regulation wasn't enough to put them out of their misery. As if awoken by the clutch ball for the first time in history, Aller awoke from his slumber and locked in, getting Penn State a tie ball game down 14 late, enough to send the game to chaos overtime. And we all know how that goes with Penn State. Even with the Katron Allen touchdown, Oregon was quick on their webbed feet to respond. Dante Moore was doing his part in keeping the Duckies alive, and now it was up to Aller to fulfill his end of the bargain.
Fake it to Pena. Aller, sideline. Oh, it's picked! Dylan Thieneman calls game!
Da 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 da! They did it again! We are frauds! Same shit, different toilet. Gatekeepers of the word almost. Back in their natural habitat. All that fourth quarter fire just to piss yourselves in typical fashion. No need to spit on your despair anymore. I think you know damn well what you've done. The program has turned on Franklin in record time. It was a regular season game, and you still have the entire season left to undo this. Not every team is fortunate enough to win every game on their plate, and if the remaining schedule is anything close to what it was in those first 4 weeks, you'll be fine and dandy for the 12-team playoffs. I've said this before and I'll say it again, it can't get any worse than this.
Here's Nuke incoming! Everybody get down! Set!
As well. They might have one right here. Reaching for the pylon. Touchdown, UCLA.
The reality is we've gone from an average football team to a good football team to a great football team, and we've worked really hard to do those things. But we're not an elite football team.
You know, I feel like I'm stating the obvious, but yeah, it gets worse. With the T at the end of worse, because this shit right here, this is rock bottom. This is unironically the most embarrassing moment for the program since the Sandusky trials. I'm not joking. Before this game, UCLA was winless, a whopping 0-4, with a blowout loss to New Mexico. Plus no head coach, no reliable quarterback with loyalty to the program, and no sense of direction. But funny enough, you found a way to humiliate yourself on a global scale with one of the most pathetic displays of football ever seen in the program. The unbreakable Jim Knowles defense suddenly, as if transformed into rotting wood, internally combusted, getting torched and ran through like a low-budget brothel. But with the exception of Drew Aller having a game of 200 yards passing, this had no positive service. Whatever made the defense successful in previous weeks vanished into thin air with no sign of return. And this has made thousands of times worse with the sheer unbelievable truth that this legacy game from UCLA came from Nico Amadolivia. 5 touchdowns allowed from Nico. Nico! I don't care if you just won the Super Bowl or the World Cup. You allow anything on the level of that, and there is zero possibility of coming back. They even offered to hand the game to you at the end, and you were still having none of it. Thus, you became the first team since 1985 to lose to an opponent that lost its first 4 games. As the preseason number 2 to Nico, with the added addition of a femboy coaching as the interim offensive coordinator. I'm going to say that again so you'll understand real clear and well. You got lit up by a femboy! Preseason number 2, by the way, everybody, in case you needed a reminder.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Guess we can classify 0-4 UCLA as a big game.
Why am I still getting hate?
You already know it gets worse than this. What'd I just tell you? The fans aren't even there anymore to cheer on their team. That age is long past. They're all literally here just to shit on James Franklin further. And guess what? He's here to catch the shit and throw it right back in your face. Because if you thought last week was a test of the fanhood of the Penn State faithful, you see nothing yet. The disaster class has just begun. Little game James has lost the plot and everything else along with that. If you don't like Drew Aller with 200 yards passing, don't be there when he throws for 100 yards passing with a game outdone by Preston Stone. He averages less yards than Aller in a season, and yet here he is outclassing what was thought to be a lethal Penn State offense. Somehow Aller's regressing every week to the point that it'll look like clutch-type Jeff Sims before the end of it. Are we still trying to glaze that rushing attack? Rush your local Lion fan to the hospital. They become the opposite of Indiana. Each and every week, the Hoosiers are collecting a new statement W to add to the wall of success. Meanwhile, the Nittany Lions are stacking the worst loss in modern history over and over and over again. The fan base has gotten so unbelievably sick of watching Franklin and Aller that the football gods thought to answer that in the most inhumane way imaginable. Drew Aller ends a terrible day with the worst of the worst luck. Down with an injury, which puts an end to his season and his time at Penn State. Seeing as now they're 3-3 with back-to-back losses as 20-point favorites and no hope of anything desirable, there was only one loose end left to erase. A travesty of a season capitalized with the quick and painful firing of James Franklin. 2 losses like that are enough to break any aspiring program. And here's the part which stings the most. We're only halfway there. You've got 6 more filler episodes to watch before you can get to the climax. Better pick up a new hobby. I heard lawn mowing is a great one to have in Pennsylvania. It can't get any worse than this. Surprised? Maybe a little. Iowa, after 10,000 years, is free from the shackles of scoring 12 points a game and expecting to win. While he isn't one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, Rob Gronkowski is far more serviceable considering where the offense has been in previous seasons. Part of this factor is due to Jim Knowles' defense blowing up never to be seen again, due to elite numbers against the Cupcakes and pissed off for the rest of the season. Due to his efforts, plus Penn State's reliance on the Gronk passing the football, yeah, they just outright ditched the run game now, the Nittany Lions managed to turn their usual beatdown of Iowa into a Big Ten West game. It was almost unbearable to watch. Funny enough, even without James Franklin, you still have negative ability to close out a game. You always find a way to blow it in the most painful, memorable ways possible. I would say it's the hope that kills you, but at this point, I don't think the word hope exists in your vocabulary anymore. How can you have any hope when the opposition managed to come out on top of the passing game of 68 yards? Previously one thought achievable with the Navy midshipmen, but here we are. Man, you're breaking all kinds of records this season, aren't you? Katron Allen awoke from his slumber and that didn't even matter. The rest of your offense have been missing since those Cupcake games and likely won't be coming back. Not that there's anything left to remedy, a bowl game's still on the line, but do you really want to go through that embarrassment ritual? You're better off just opting out. Your wide receivers are already one step ahead of that curve. It can't get any worse than this. It's Ohio State week, so by default, it's worse. One team is fighting for a bye week in the playoffs, and the other one forgot where they were even located by week 6. There's nobody else that knows the Jim Knowles defensive schemes better than Ryan Day. So as expected, Julian the Super Saiyan had a legacy career day on the Penn State defense. So much for exploiting that Ohio State knowledge. The only thing exploited is the fraud level Penn State has reached at this point. The team put up almost 500 yards of offense as compared to Penn State's 200, all because Ohio State can do what the Nittany Lions can't and cover the spread. The lack of motivation or will to fight back was blatantly obvious from across the board. The offense is weakening per week, the defense is letting Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith do whatever they want, and the Lions are diving deeper and deeper into the core of despair. The worst part is the apparent possibility Ohio State upgraded from Knowles with the hire of Matt Patricia. There's no good news for you here. I can't even say it's close to being over because, well, it really isn't.
Stop cheating! Bro, just stop cheating for once, bro! Stop cheating!
Yeah, nothing says cheating like throwing another screen for 2 yards to punt again. That'll really show them! Things have gotten so dire at Penn State that they believe the answer to all of their offensive problems comes from the brother of Sean Clifford. It can't get any worse than this.
Backside throw. Singleton makes a miss. Goes inside. Singleton. Touchdown.
Holy hell. It's happening. Awoken by the concept of program depth and recency bias, Penn State arose from the depths to potentially spoil the Cinderella run by Indiana. Interim coach Terry Smith rallied the troops out of nowhere, and Penn State turned into a competent team again. The defense was causing massive struggles for Fernando Mendoza, they were keeping the run game at bay, and the offense was actually moving up and down the field. Penn State's own run game is returned with Singleton popping off for 2 touchdowns. Sad Valley had a smile on it for the first time in 6 weeks. Now the hope was that you could finish the job and prevent, I don't know, an ungodly quick late game touchdown to solidify Mendoza's Heisman art.
Mendoza again comes in over the middle and a first down for Omar Koldal. Mendoza over the middle. Oh, he's got it. Mendoza. Baker. And it's a catch. Mendoza. In trouble! It's
I'm sure you've heard this times aplenty, but you almost had him. You sure took that title and ran with it, and there's no return fee for that accomplishment. Horrific play calling at the end of what should have been a very winnable game for the Nittany Lions, doing them in the end. Even when Big Game James isn't there to take the blame, the title remains with Penn State until proven otherwise. The Guangdong Tigers of the Tardaria Squidtards could be a top 5 team at any point in the future, and Penn State would probably lose to them too. Who am I kidding? They absolutely would. Such a ranking led to the first time the Hoosiers went into Depression Valley and came out a winner. Penn State is now 3-6. 3-6. 0-6 in the Big Ten. Emblematic of the word collapse. It can't get any worse than this. Okay, I was actually serious that time. It literally couldn't get any worse than that. Not when the opponent you play is probably in a worse position than you are. The clear difference is that nobody had any faith in Michigan State. Or Nebraska, ever since Dylan Mahomes took a season-ending injury. Or Rutgers, ever. Penn State actually ended the regular season to how they started it, blasting past a bunch of terrible teams to inflate where they stand in the conference. If you forget they allowed Nathan Krakatoa to put up 338 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, the team as a whole looks like they give a shit again. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton took turns looking like first-round draft backs. The Jim Knowles defense had shown its ups and downs, mainly downs, but the Gronk had a 200-yard passing game. The same consistency as Aller, just without the picks. Point is, in all 3 of these games, you did something that was previously thought to be a mystery. Win. As painful as it might have been to watch your team shit themselves whilst the others shit harder, you came out victorious in the end, and that's all that matters. Such a feat got you to 6 wins on the season and has made you bowl eligible. Oh shit, you're bowl eligible. Well, at least now the season has reached its postseason mark and you have nothing to play for anymore. So, it can't get any worse than this. Wait, who exactly is your new head coach? Don't let LSU's governor and their escapades fool you. This was just as much as an outright dadgum disaster. As to be expected, Penn State considered themselves better than hiring from within, so Terry Smith did not become the new head coach. Like everyone else, they considered getting Kirk Cignetti, which was then followed by a contract extension. Then they targeted Nebraska's Matt Rule, which was then followed by a contract extension. Then they targeted Louisville's Jeff Brom, which was then followed by a very likely contract extension. You're seeing an obvious trend here. They tried John Sumrall and Elaine Kiffin, who both found more desirable jobs, offensive coordinator Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills, but he also took a more desirable job as the new head coach of the Bills. Mike Oko, extended. Eli Drinkwitz, extended. Clark Lee, you guessed it, extended. Whatever options Penn State message boards pretended to have were all washed away, while Pat Kraft scrambled desperately to fix the situation. He put all of his marbles into reaching out to BYU's Kalani Sitake. You can only guess how that turned out. There was key speculation he was actually interested in taking the position. Or that was until Crumble Cookies got involved. Wait, what? Hold on, that's not part of the script, is it? Unbelievable. You've got to be shitting out of my entire ass. You're telling me a marquee program in the Big Ten got outbid for their future by cookies? You're a big fan of donors until they give you the coaching cuck chair, huh? Welcome to hell. While this entire episode was going on, Penn State's roster, both current and future, were getting picked apart like sushi. James Franklin had made his first appearance with Virginia Tech and in the process, turned Penn State into the villains of the situation. He was on College Game Day getting the glock, glock, glock from Saban and company whilst you were taking an L from Cookies! Guess this confirms Crumble Cookies is a top 5 cookie company, huh? But with Franklin's departure to Tech, he turned your upcoming class to...
Gone. Reduced to atoms.
Whatever value you had left either went their own way or they went with the coordinators to Lawrence or Knoxville. It wasn't until 58 days of terror and program reputation going down the shitter that Kraft finally found his guy. He didn't have to look too far away from BYU to find him. The answer was found in Matt Campbell from Iowa State. For anybody who thinks this is a low ball for Penn State, consider that taking their quarterback, their running backs, their receivers, their lines, their defense, and many other portions of the coaching staff were also additions for the short-term roster. Basically, they're now the Penn State Cyclones, or EF0 Tornadoes to reference the fact that they are threatening as an outside fart. Now advancing into the next season, it is going to likely take some significant time to undo the damage from the previous season. If nothing else, you get a consolation prize for that late season run by beating up on whatever's left of Dabo Swinney's program in the Pinstripe Bowl. Even without Allen or Singleton, the Gronk did more than enough through the air to keep Clemson away. Hell, I'd argue Cade Klubnik did the dirty work by sabotaging his own team. Either that or the disappearance of the run game. Hey, look at that, you guys have something in common now. Remember that this game was projected to be for the national title in the preseason. How the time indeed flies. In the time between then and now, Matt Campbell has managed to put out a significant chunk of the dumpster fire. They signed a decent recruiting class through Campbell's scrambling of talent, they have a roster capable of competing in next season's Big Ten, and we got a good peek of what 2026 looks like.
Why not enjoy the go with Charmin Ultra Soft?
Which just might be the softest schedule of all time. You managed to make it through 2025 avoiding a losing record and keeping that streak alive, and still didn't have the worst losing streak in program history. So yes, it certainly could have been worse, but it doesn't take away from what you become. You were without a doubt one of the greatest frauds of modern day college football. You had a squad built like the Power Rangers, and yet not only did you fail to win the big games, you shit yourself in the little ones too. An abject disaster capitalized by what very well could have been a coaching search that ended with you hiring BK out of desperation. And I've got a good feeling James Franklin might pass you by turning Virginia Tech into what he couldn't with you. The video that I made over the offseason labeling you as the king of the Big Ten is now officially outdated because the Penn State Nittany Lions are your 2025 clown of the season. Hey, if nothing else, you can put up a Twitter post saying, Penn State won all of their games! See you next time, and of course, power to Tardaria!
I think it starts with Coach Franklin.
Yeah.
It's the consistent messages, the consistent way we practice, the consistent schedules. Like it all plays into consistent performance, and he's built that. You know, and it's not a maybe it's a secret that I just gave away, but it's I mean that's what we do. And I think when you have a consistent process, a consistent schedule, it shows consistent results.